welcome to this episode of Gaming the System, the podcast that looks at gaming through a feminist lens. And you've got me hosting today. I'm Alex, as you know. We've got Matt, Caroline, and Jem. Did I mention what we're talking about? We're going to be talking about ancient games in this episode. And you might wonder, what do I mean by ancient games? Well, I mean games that were played in ancient times. So, what I'm going to do is probably going to talk about a lot of different cultures around the world, because I tried to include as many cultures as I could in my little bit of research that I've done, and we're going to try and look at those games. It's going to be quite similar to the board gaming episode, but it's going to be ancient style, so it should be quite fun.
I feel like there's a Bill and Ted reference in there somewhere.
Oh, no. I need to watch more of Bill and Ted, actually. Yeah, I'm missing out on some big references there.
I don't think it's very feminist.
So what I'm going to start with is a question which is, and we can fill this in with what I have researched as well, but generally, how much do you know about ancient games?
I'm going first to say nothing.
You can start. Nothing, that's fine.
No, I do. Yeah. I got GCSE in Latin and ancient Greek, so I feel like somewhere there might be some sort of knowledge hidden in my brain, but no, can't think about anything other than I'm pretty sure chess is quite ancient, but I don't know, and I'm looking forward to learning from you today, Alex.
Yes, well, I'll do my best to fill in some of the gaps in a limited but hopefully fun way. Yes. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, so interestingly, the first thing I thought when you talk about games is you've got the Olympic Games, which are probably some of the oldest forms of competition ever. Although for some reason there were just lots of naked young men wrestling and running and fighting and thinking, okay. And you're thinking, well, what was the name of the guy who ran the first marathon?
I can't remember, but I think he was on Horrible History.
Marathon. No, he had to run two marathons. He had to run two marathon. That's where he had to run two. That's the thing. But yes, I can't remember his name either. I had to translate an incredibly long passage about him at least 3 times as a teenager. Go on.
Your memory rebels. It says, I will not remember that bullshit. Yeah, as I was thinking, well, that maybe that suggests a kind of running training, the fact that he was able to do that. But the end of the story is that he does die at the end. He collapses. So clearly they weren't training well enough. Yeah, and so that made me like the idea of, we were talking about how sometimes games matter and sometimes they don't, and they're like the competition to show who's the best. And I believe they did actually have entrants from other cultures come in and do it as well. And this idea of serious competition, and I've been doing a union training course on organising, so I'm hyper in socialist mode at the minute, and it made me think that the reason that games are really quite sparse the further you go back in history, because there was so little time for people in general to do things, because you're either a peasant in the field or a peasant in the mine, and so you've only got time to do limited things. So you've got the great big scale things like the Olympics, and the very small games that have probably been forgotten because no one has cared about peasantry in the past.
That's a good point to make, and I'll come onto that at some point later in the episode. But yes, Jem, did you have any other thoughts?
I don't know anything about this subject, but I feel like there's probably games involving marbles, and there's probably games involving stones, and I feel like some kind of early version of drafts, or there's another game, isn't there, that involves the one where you turn the stones over black and white and stuff. I can't remember what the name is, but yeah, something. But I feel like something like that. I just have visions of ancient Greeks playing some kind of
Tetris.
stone related. Yeah, Tetris.
Just pushing it down.
The original Zelda. Yeah, no, I think it's a really interesting topic, actually, and I think that, I mean, I take the point that you've made, Matt, but I also think that there was a lot less to fill people's time with outside of work. So perhaps, people weren't sitting around watching TV. So perhaps this was a way that people could engage in a bit of downtime after they'd been out fishing or whatever they were doing.
Yeah.
Fighting, probably.
Well, in my very limited research that I've done, which involved looking at a lot of top 10 ancient games list and things, I found that most of them were actually tabletop or board games, what we would call board games nowadays, and most involved playing between two people. And what I'm going to do is actually start, since chess was mentioned, I'm going to start with chess and where that came from. And as far as I can tell, it kind of originated from ancient India and spread across Asia and into Europe that way. But it only goes back, sort of officially, from about 1,500 years ago. So it's not actually that old when you think about it. And it was probably inspired by some even older games, which I'm going to start talking about now. So, because, as you know, I am, well, technically, I suppose you could describe me as an Egyptologist, but I'm not really. I studied it for my undergrad degree, and one of the most well-known ancient games from ancient Egyptian times is Senet, which translates as passing. And that was played as far back as 2620 BCE. So it's probably one of the older games. And I think there's a lot of religious significance there because it eventually came to symbolise the journey into the afterlife that your piece would make through the board. And obviously it had little pieces that you would move and throwing sticks that you would throw up with a black and white side, and the colours that they came up would kind of tell you how many pieces you need to move and all that sort of thing. And the funny thing was, my first exposure of it was actually in Tomb Raider 4, The Lost Revelation, where you played a life-size version of the board and Lara was one of the pieces, which was really cool because it gives you absolutely no instructions at all. So you had to figure it out yourself.
Wow.
Or just look it up online. But the way that you learnt about that while playing that game was really interesting. Really interesting mechanic. And I think you played it against one of the gods, quote unquote, possibly Horus. I can't quite recall. But that's one of the more well-known ancient games.
So what was going on in the world at that point?
So at that point,
and where in the world was this?
I think it was so in ancient Egypt mostly, but I think it's kind of spread into neighbouring territories potentially. So you're looking at North Africa, and during that time, obviously, the Egyptian Empire was pretty much. I can't remember exactly. This is terrible. I'm going to butcher my Egyptian history now, but I'm gonna. Where did I write down something else? Was Middle Kingdom? Probably Middle Kingdom. And the kingdoms in Egyptian history are happy, stable times, and the intermediate periods are times of instability, where foreign people come in and invade the country. If you're ever looking at Egyptian history and you see something happened in the fifth or second intermediate period, it's a time of instability and unstable rule. If you're ever curious. But yeah, so it probably would have been. It was played for several centuries, I think, until the Romans came in and brought in their games, and they were like, no, these are the ones we should play, because I think it was tied so heavily to Egyptian religion and symbolism and myth there. It had ties to the culture, which I always found quite interesting. Another one which I wasn't 100% sure on the rules of, but also comes from Egypt, is Hounds and Jackals, where there's a type of board with several holes across it, and these little sticks with heads of jackals and heads of hounds on them, and they stick in the holes, which looks really pretty. Again, I should have prepared with pictures, but I'm sure you can all Google or go to Wikipedia, because there's some lovely pictures on there.
I'm just using my imagination. It's pretty terrifying.
Yeah,
actually.
no, it's really lovely. They're probably about this big, I would say, the sticks. And that comes from around 2000 BCE. So again, very, very old. A game which I'm hoping we'll actually play during this episode, originating from Mesopotamia, from an even more ancient time of 3000 BCE, is the royal game of Ur. And the important thing about this is to note that in the title it says royal, so it gives you some clue as to who would have played and the kind of status symbol it is. I mean, when you think about most of the ancient world, who's got time to play board games? Probably royalty, so it comes with the status there. And again, it's a very similar sort of game. It's essentially a race to the end of the board with your counters, and there's a few fun little bits which I will explain when we actually come to play it. But again, it's a 2-player game, and I think there's also an association a lot of the time with war mechanics and kind of outwitting your opponent and the strategies behind that, and perhaps some militaristic thinking there. So it kind of ties in with what a lot of was happening during ancient times, which was a lot of warfare at the same time as well. So it does beg the question, like, who would have been playing these games? Probably mostly men, if you had to hedge your bets and guess. Moving forward through time, we're going to move into Nordic territories. There's a game called Tafel. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, spelled Tafl, Tafel, which comes from sort of Viking times. I think I wrote down it's actually the 11th to 12th century, so it's a little bit more modern. Now we're moving into the Common Era times, so Ado Domino, as it once was. And the point of that one is that you would have a limited number of counters in the middle and a larger number of counters on the outside. So it was very much a military strategy game, and you had to escape from being ambushed by the larger amount of counters who were coming into the middle. And your counters represented the king and his company. So again, that was very much military based, which I thought was interesting to read about. And that was actually based on a Roman game, which I hope I'm not going to butcher the pronunciation of either. Lodus Latrum Colorum, it's very Latin, which again is about military tactics. So there's a theme emerging here, definitely. And that one is a very similar thing. You've got a flat board and counters. So there's definitely some patterns emerging as well there. There's a couple of other ones as well that I wrote down. A game from ancient India, Pachisi, which is kind of a cloth, and it's shaped in a cross, which I thought looked quite interesting because that's very portable in and of itself. Because sometimes a lot of the tables that they would play on would be really heavy stone, so of course they're not very portable. But so perhaps that one would have been played by more of the masses at large, especially if it was made out of a more easily acquired material. And then moving into China, you've got up to 2,500 years ago, Go, or Geo, or I'm going to put this pronunciation
Pokemon
as well,
Go.
Wechi,
It's not the same as Pokemon Go, no.
which is Chinese. Not the same, unfortunately, no. Sadly not. And then I wrote down, as a bit of fun, slightly more modern game, the very first commercialised board game, Game of the Goose, which I actually saw in an exhibition. This was way before pandemic times. A board game exhibition that was doing a tour of all the museums in the area, which was really cool. And it was basically a history of board games, so very relevant to this particular podcast. But Game of the Goose was the very first commercialised game that was sold in the 1880s to 1890s. And the goal of that one was you had your dice, you had your counters, and 63 squares. To get to the middle, you had to roll a perfect 63, essentially. And the first one into the middle won. So it's definitely a pattern emerging there. Some very simple 2-player or more games on a board with some counters, with some dice, and a very sort of simple goal. But in fact, there's a lot of strategy there as well, which I think is interesting. And then, of course, you move into the territory of what is a sport, what is a game. You've got a couple of ones I've put in my notes here. Mesopotamian ball games, which you might have seen depicted in Road to El Dorado, if you've ever watched that animation.
Great film.
Yeah, it is.
Film.
But that's very evocative of like ancient games and what you think of when you say the word ancient games, because it looks amazing, but nobody understands it. Nobody knows why they were doing it, what they were doing it for, how it was played, really. I think they knocked the ball about with their hips. There was very much a team thing, but there could have also been some human sacrifice, the usual. And then you've got the Minoan ball leaping, which is one of my favourites, which is all on Crete, of course, with the Minoan civilization. And that's, again, tied potentially to rituals. Some people argue it never happened. Some people think it did, and it was a sport. And that men actually leapt over balls as they charged at them. There's a really lovely sculpture of it in the British Museum. It's only about this big. It's very easy to walk past. I nearly did. I was very excited that I finally found it. It's like, oh my God, it's here. But that's really cool. And again, that's very much tied into bull worship and that sort of thing. Or at least I think it is anyway. That was my conclusion. So you've got your major aspects to do with gaming is your religion, your military tactics, and all of these were usually passed down through families. And, you teach your game to your children, that kind of thing, and it would be passed down through the generations and also spread through conquest of different cultures into different territories, and that's how the games would spread. So, with that in mind, what do you think these games say about the cultures that they come from? And is there kind of a way we can look at this through a feminist lens and talk about what this all means in terms of ancient games versus modern games, and has some of that carried through still to today? It's a big question, I know.
Well, I think you've in terms of a feminist lens, I think you've framed it flawlessly.
Thank you very
because
much.
you've gone through like the greatest hits of these games for the last few thousand years, and you've drawn they would predominantly have been, well, first off, there's a problem that apparently women don't exist through history. If you look at, they've never written anything, they've never said anything, they've never done anything. Women's voices have been completely silenced for thousands of years. So we have no idea what they were playing, because they must have been, because that's what people do. So straight away, just by it's conspicuous because of its absence straight away. So played by men with time, so powerful men. About religion, which is again about power. And it only just struck me now how monarchistic chess is. That there isn't really. It's a very, very specifically British flavour that we have with rooks and knights and bishops. I wonder if that has parallel power structures, and yeah, that there's the very, very, some of the toxic masculine elements of war and conflict and men only and powerful men only really it's fascinating seeing that has carried so far back, and that we're only just starting to seizing the means of production, as I love to say, of everyone being able to play these things, and the fact that so many games are still based on fighting and
We're capturing territory, you know. Yeah.
Do you? So I'm wondering, because I still believe that people still had downtime, even the sort of lower rungs of society still had time where they weren't working, and I suspect they were playing games, but I wonder whether perhaps you were saying, you know, like a lot of the tables were like these big, you know, marble tables that things were being played on, and those have survived sort of through time, but perhaps we've lost some of the games that other people, that the, you know, the average person was playing, and I just wonder, yeah, like Matt says, you know, how many games that women were playing have been lost in time, or is it similar to today, where, you know, women's free time is less than men's free time, and perhaps women weren't playing games because they were too busy doing all of the other jobs that they were doing. You know, I mean, it's
There's often a thing about games in modern times, that games can provide a format for men to bond in a way that women don't need. So in that sort of women will just talk to each other, whereas for men to feel they can talk about emotions and stuff, they need to have some sort of game in the middle between them so that they can carry on that conversation. I wonder if there's some of that. But also, you all keep saying things that make me want to Google things, and I could just share one fact that I have Googled, which is because Matt, you then just made me go, yeah, what are you can't be calling a bishop, like the chess piece, a bishop. I can't believe it's called a bishop in every other country. I have now found the Wikipedia article that tells you the name of every chess piece in every country, and I won't read it all out. But the bishop is most commonly, when it's not called a bishop, is most commonly called an elephant. And in Chinese version of chess, it's the elephant. And in a lot of different countries, they call it the elephant as well. And I was really intrigued by that. Like, how do we go? What is this figure that is imposing and important? I suppose that's the sort of, what is the relationship between an elephant and a bishop? And it is that imposing stature that comes along. But again, and when we talk about chess, you'll often get, you know, your sort of your meninists, your men's rights activists. Like, oh well, what about chess? Queen's the most powerful piece, isn't she? Of course, the thing is, yes, she can do a lot of stuff, and she is very powerful in many ways. But she's having to use that power to protect the useless fucking king who's just sitting at home, and that's all she's got to do because he can't possibly be out there. She's out there protecting. So. That's my rant. I've forgotten what the point was. Sorry, but that's some things for me to Google.
Yeah.
Also, the other thing I interestingly Googled there was dice, cube dice.
Yeah,
you find those back in Egyptian tombs back from 2000 BCE, and that's
so cool, isn't it?
Is that like
cool.
The four-sided, which, you know, if you play D&D, you'll be familiar with those go back pretty far as well. But it's the fact that we still use dice today as the base level of all of our board games, pretty much.
Yeah. I did actually look up the Hounds and Jackals game, and it's amazing. It's so
cool.
intricate and beautiful.
I have found some pictures. I will share them as you're talking if you like. This one is Senate, so that's a really beautiful example.
Yeah.
It's made of faience, so this would have been a very rich person, and it's got a lovely drawer for all the pieces as well, which is beautiful.
The board game geek nerds would love that.
I'll find another one. Hold on.
Just expanded our audience.
As you said as well, there's the British Museum. It's always, I miss the British Museum. That's a thing I miss, like, from not living in London. And it is an amazing place, but it was always the little details where you see the little things that give you a view of how people live their day-to-day life that I love just staring at in there and just getting a real feel for it. You know, normally like combs and sort of tools, cooking tools and stuff, but games, yay.
This is Pachisi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's the one I mentioned may have been more portable because it looks like it would have been made. I mean, obviously this is probably a modern version, but it probably would have been made of cloth, which is quite cool. But you can see the way that you can see like modern board games would have been easily inspired by the sort of shapes that you see there and the patterns and all sorts of things. So just shows how it hasn't really changed a great deal in terms of the layout, which is cool.
It's a bit like they always say in drama and literature that there's only I can't remember it now, but there is like only six stories or
stories or something.
Thank you. There are only 6 basic stories, and all stories are like that. And I suppose with board games and games just in general, you have a similar sort of like the mechanics that exist. There are just some base level ones that exist, and that everything else is just making it a little fancier and making a little bit and putting its own little spin on the same version of it.
I love so you're right, like everything boils down to the very, very simplest thing. A dice, you're gonna get a random roll every time. It's endless. And that you can have a little bag with some dice in, and you can play that anywhere, anytime, on a street corner in America, in a Maharaja's palace in India, anywhere. And I do love that simplicity, when it is boiled right down. So those are the things that we find 4,000 years ago, showing they got it right 4,000 years ago, and we're just retelling that story.
This is Game of the Goose as well. That was the very first commercialised game, which is really cool, I think. I love how it's all shaped like eggs.
Fans. It's got eggs.
Yeah. And there are so many different versions of that if you look into Game of the Goose. There's loads for different countries as well. It like swept across Europe. It was, what you would have called viral, I suppose, but in 1800s.
Also, Jem, you just reminded me, like, repeating my thing back to me of like, what were women doing? Just making me think the destruction of knowledge is just, it hurts my soul. I find it so. That's why I have the Dark Ages depressed me so much, because it was literally 1,000 years of just going, no, we're not going to make any progress, we're not going to share any knowledge. And that just made me go, ugh.
But stuff was happening, lives were being lived, and that's the thing, is we just have no records of it, and then you think, like, 200 years from now, will the technology exist to go back and look at all the shite that we've recorded? Sorry, I meant, I wasn't talking about this podcast. But it's like, all the Instagram accounts and all the stuff. I mean, is there almost a reverse of that, where there's too much social history, or will the social historians of the future go, this is fucking awesome, we've got all the primary sources we need, let's just look at everything. It's interesting.
Hopefully they won't be Kim Kardashian. The epitome of society.
Right.
Hopefully we'll be in a socialist utopia by then.
You never know. I think it's time we played one of these games, don't you? Shall we see? Let's have a look. We're going to play the Royal Game of and hopefully we can all see that. What I might do, I'm going to have to go to that actual game screen to show you all the rules, and hopefully it will make sense. So feel free. Dr. Irving Finkel is amazing, by the way. He's very eccentric, shall we say. He's the man that actually discovered this game and kind of deciphered the rules on a cuneiform tablet and brought it back to be an actual playable game from when people didn't realise about it before, basically. So you can credit him.
Beard game going on there. He
does. Yes, I would encourage anyone who's curious to watch. There's a couple of videos on this website that where he explains how he came to discover it and work it out. So it's really cool. But anyway, the point of the game is to move your piece from this end of the board round to this end of the board before the other person, and each person has, I think, 7 of those little buttons. So how to play, you roll the dice on your turn, and a little triangle / pyramid shaped dice, and if they land with the little white bit facing up, that's how many you can move, how many squares you can move. So then you can move a piece. If you land on one of the flowers, you get another roll. And if you land on an opponent's piece, this kind of middle bit is where you can take other pieces off the board. So if, say, your opponent's piece is here, and you move 2 from here, from the flower, you'll be able to take that piece off and stop that other person from getting to the other end of the board. Hopefully it will all make sense. It will make more sense when we start playing. But anyway, the flower tiles obviously are also safe spaces, so you cannot be taken if you land on one of those, but you can also, once you land on it, have another roll of the dice. That's pretty much it. So I'm going to go ahead and start playing against the computer. What difficulty level do you think we can handle in the time that we have left?
Maybe easy.
We have a
I
split
vote
decision.
easy.
I vote
Jem
medium.
votes medium. Alex has the. What do you think, Alex?
I don't know. I tried easy this morning and I did it in just about half an hour. So
Okay.
Let's go with easy then.
shall we go for easy? Yeah. Well, we can always level up for another episode. It'll be fine. Right. So we're human. We've got these yellow coloured buttons, and the computer has the blue ones. So we're going to roll. And we can move 2. So we're going to move 2. There we go. It will all make more sense once we get into it. Oh, we can only move 1 there. I think a strategy I quickly came upon was to get as many of your pieces in this first section here. So now we can move 3. We can move that one onto the flower and get another roll. So I think I'll do that. Unless you guys.
Can you only get a new one if the bottom square is 3?
Yes, if there's no free space for it to move into, obviously you can't then move. But yeah, feel free to shout at me if you think.
So where are we trying to get to?
We need to move our pieces down the middle row towards the bottom of the board, and then back up to the flower on the other side.
Okay,
there.
and the computer has to do that as well, then.
Yes, it does, and we all have to get all of our buttons off before the other person.
So it's a bit like backgammon, then.
A little bit, yes, yeah. I think a lot of these games kind of inspired backgammon, shall we say?
So why is this score 0? Just before you.
Oh, just because
the screen
we
and
haven't
nobody
rolled.
can see that.
I haven't rolled. Oh, it's because we haven't got any off yet. And the score down here is for that fills up once you get your buttons off the board.
But I mean, sorry, why is the roll say 0?
Oh, because we haven't rolled, I don't think. Even though it says.
Well, right, okay.
But I will roll now, and it will say. There we go.
There you go.
So we can move 2. What would you like me to do? Can't do that. Can do that. Can do that. But we're in danger as soon as we move on to this middle row.
Can you get to the flower in the top right corner?
No, because that's
we've got to come down.
That's their row. So everyone's moving into this middle row.
Oh, I understand.
Column.
Can you move 1 to that top middle?
Which one would you like me to move? That one?
That one. Yeah.
Okie dokie. Oh. Okay.
See. Does he take it?
So if we get a 2, we can take that one. Or we can get a 1 and take that one, or a 3. Or no, wait, 4. But then this one could come and take any of the pieces in this row. So
then they just start again.
Yeah. So we can. The only thing I think we could do that, but then if the computer rolls a 2, it can easily take us off. So that would be a bit dangerous. Or we could move this one on, or we could move this one further up. What are your thoughts, guys? Do you want me to try and take the computer?
Imagine
aggression!
we're 4,000 years ago,
Oh,
Ah,
he's done it.
boo.
We've taken off. Right.
See, this is where aggression
So-
gets you.
Okay, only one. We can move this one off the flower.
Yeah.
Move that one up. We can move this one on.
Move the one off the flower. We've got
Okay.
there's no one. Take it. Take it.
We can only take it if we land directly on it. So if we move over it, it doesn't matter.
Darn. Well, if you
We
move that
can
one on
move
the
on
left
to
up to the
flower.
flower.
Yeah, and have another roll. 3. So we could move this one onto another
Get
flower.
another flower, yeah.
I don't know if that would... I've never done that before. Let's see if it works. We do. We get double roll. Okay. Cool. We can even move that further down and get it pretty much out of
That'd be
danger.
quite safe.
Away,
then.
Yeah.
Get it away from the
Let's
blues.
do that. Interesting.
Get more on?
Yeah, we could do that. I think that's always a good strategy to have some waiting. Because when you get to the very end of the game, it's like a mad rush. I had a massive lead when I was practicing this morning, and it got to basically the same point with a one counter each to go, and I managed to win. So it was quite tense in the end. We can take that one, but then these two are waiting here.
Should we get the other one safe, the one that's at the far end?
We can move it to there, yeah.
Yeah.
But you have to get an exact roll off to get it.
Okay, cool. But it's not. I feel happier that it's down there now. We can
Yes,
leave
very much so. It's now out of the danger zone because it's not in the the middle column. 2. Dangerous.
You could take that. Yeah, take that one.
Yeah. Oh, you can sometimes get zeros though, you see. So that did not work.
You move that one onto the flower. You can, the bottom one.
Oh yes,
Get
no,
another
that's
roll.
true. Yeah,
roll.
well done.
Do the dots mean anything
Yes.
on the tiles? Like there's 4 dots.
The dots.
5
I
dots.
don't know.
Yeah.
I think maybe they're just decoration. I'm
Just
not sure.
fun.
Yeah.
Hold on.
We can
I've got
move
the
our counter
Wikipedia page open.
or no, we can't move into only flowers. So I think the best thing to do would be to move it off. Yeah. Go. So we now have 1. Sneaky.
Huh.
Okay. We can go to
So-
flower.
That flower.
For you guys, is the computer male or female or genderless
Ooh.
or non-binary?
This is very bad. I automatically assumed it was male.
Yeah, same.
Yes.
Same.
I'd ascribed an entirely male persona to that computer.
Yeah. Interesting, isn't it?
I'm going to go to the flower again and get another roll.
Yeah.
Should we move another one on?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. Oh, it's mine again. Alright. We can't move one on because there's one there. Can't move that up. Can move that there.
Yeah, I would move
that's
that one.
there.
I would move that top one round because the chance of the blues getting
1,
getting
2,
us,
3.
then we can-
3 or
we'll be
4 there,
ahead,
wouldn't
won't
you?
we?
Yeah. Yeah.
And stay ahead of them.
Mhm. Go to
Flower.
flower. Yep.
The original 5 versions that they found, Jem, just to answer your question, all had slightly different decorations on them. They were all the same great board game, but they all had slightly different decorations. So the flower things and the dots and stuff is probably representing what they sort of looked like.
Cool.
Maybe
Which one
move
do we
the,
want to move here?
the top one in the
that
middle.
one. Yeah.
This is safe.
Yeah.
No, the
Cool.
no. I meant
Nobody
the other
wants
one.
to
But
hear
it's
about
okay.
the red limestone
sorry.
and lapis lazuli, just tactical. That's
1. Should we move one more on?
Oh, but he's got one down there. Oh, sorry, you guys know that.
Yeah. We can't move these two because
I think we need to get those we need to get the middle
far
ones
down as possible.
out as soon as possible. Those are the ones we're going to get. Oh, they're just stacking them up. That naughty
Flower. Anytime there's a flower move, I'm just going to do flower.
Oh, we can take that one.
Yes. There we
Bang!
go.
You're not getting home.
Yeah.
Does not bring out the best side of you.
It's good die counter.
Oh, dear.
One.
Games and aggressions. A study.
Let's go. I can move this one out.
It's interesting as well. Like I've noticed you, Jem and Matt, you're both doing quite well at articulating like strategy and what you think you should be doing. I can't. I just like do that, but I couldn't tell you why or sort of how, and I don't even know why. I just am like do that.
Do we want to move this one down a bit further? Can't move this one off because there's too many.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can move that one off.
Dun, 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 dun.
Get another point. Do we want to get some more onto the board, do we think? Because there's a lot up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're sort of filling the board, aren't they?
They are.
It's not a good roll.
No.
Yeah, better get that bottom one out
Yeah.
as far further away.
Well, it says on here as well, like you were saying, Alex, that people tend to assume that a bad roll means they've got bad luck in general. I'm lucky in the roll of the die. I'm lucky in life.
No, I can't wait. We will do an episode on gambling because gambling is one of the most toxic masculine activities there is, and they're it's embarrassing. Men are embarrassing sometimes.
I thought we were just going to play poker. I thought that would be good.
That's fine.
Do we want to do that? Because there's a lot here that could take us.
Do it anyway.
Okay.
Reckless abandon. See, she
Don't
did
listen to
warn
me.
you.
I don't know what I'm doing. I've never played this game.
We'll go on.
Okay, there's too much singing in this game.
Yeah, it is.
Tiny lights.
They had someone 4,000 years ago with a
little bell.
a lyre. Ding!
Bell ring. For the royal game of air. That's the only move we can do, which is another flower. Oh, we could get a new one on.
We could move
not further away. Chances of being caught 1, 2, 3. Yeah, we'll move further down, I think.
Do we know the link or the relationship between like the history of gaming and the history of art? I mean, were people gaming as soon as they were sort of creating art? Were we gaming, or is it?
Well,
That's a really
first of all, I think
question.
that's your pitch for another episode.
Yeah.
Ah.
When Athena talked about cavemen painting on the walls, my instant thought was it was because they were bored.
Yeah.
So many of these things come out of boredom. Not everything has a grand vision behind it.
Well, and this is a brilliant example of I've been looking at all the images on here of the sets that they found, and the ones that you were showing us is like this is the art that went into the creation of these board games and sort of like even the basic. And again, you look at it's like anyone who plays D&D knows the addiction of dice and how you can buy so many more beautiful dice. I've been playing D&D online for 2.5 years, and I'm still buying dice, even though I don't physically roll dice anymore, because they're beautiful and you can get such gorgeous ones. And you look at ancient dice, and again they come in all these colours and patterns, and can we do it like this? And chess sets and everything. So as long as there's been games, there's been art. People go, how can they make this pretty? But
And there's
probably
always like you'll see a very simple game, and then you'll find like a Maharaja had a specifically made silver, beautiful, pristine artifact to play it.
yeah.
That seems to be what happens.
It's like,
Get
now,
that one. Get the middle one. Yeah. Get the middle
now
one.
they
Right.
That one into flower. Yeah.
horribly
the beige
rich
flower.
people with really fancy Scrabble sets who like have like an incredibly
Right.
huge sort of thing. It's like,
I hate the
Oh,
rich.
Scrabbles, yeah.
I tweeted at Elon Musk earlier today, and I hope he saw it.
I'm
Bastard.
sure he reads them all personally, Matt.
I'm sure.
Have any
He
of
has
you
nothing
watched
else
The
to do.
Batman?
No, but
No.
my friend's in it.
Any of you planning to see it?
I do
When-
eventually plan to see it.
Yes, when I can watch it at home.
I won't say anything about it then.
Yes, I have a friend who plays one of the Gotham policemen.
Ooh, exciting.
Really?
Not with any
Ah.
speaking lines. He's just in like one of the extra policemen.
Still
But
cool.
it's still really cool.
Also, you're winning if I'm reading this
Well,
situation.
I hope so. This is the kind of stage I was at this morning where I thought, oh, I've got this easy. And then it caught up.
Yeah. The comeback.
See, the trouble is if you get
it
rid of...
evolve into backgammon, and that is always the problem with backgammon. You think you've got it, and there's always a comeback on the roll.
If you get rid of a lot, there's not enough of your counters to get rid of the other counters that are still on the board. So they all make it through.
I have very clear memories of my dad shouting at backgammon computer games in the 90s because he was convinced they were cheating. They were rolling doubles every time. And I'm sure, of course, the games were cheating then, but you know. But he also thought Omar Bridge was cheating as well. But so, topical references for the young people there.
I wonder what the history of cheating is.
Oh, it's
As
must be
long
as
as
old as
there
the
have been-
games themselves.
As long as there have been competition, there have been cheating bastards.
But where's the fun? I get no satisfaction out of winning if I know that. Even like if I accidentally cheat in a board game, for example, where I've noticed that I've missed a token or I've taken extra turn. It ruins the whole game for me. It's like, well, this is no fun now. This is an unearned victory. So I can't understand when people actively choose to cheat at games.
I think it's a matter of character. You learn about values, perhaps. But yeah, I like that things can come down to a dice roll. I love games like, say with Warhammer, you can have your two sides, you can meticulously plan everything, make all the right moves at the right time, but then if the dice, that's where that sometimes you can't. Luck will always play a part, and I really, really like it in games where you've got strategy but is tempered by luck. I find those games fascinating.
Like Mario Kart. That blue shell's going to come for you at some point, so you know. It's all
And there have to be rules. The rules have to be strict, and you have to follow them. Then that's when you know that if you win, then you really won.
Yeah.
Yes. Bring that one down.
Yeah.
That blue one's gonna get up.
It's getting a bit dicey now.
Oh,
Dicey. Huh? Good joke.
I knew you'd enjoy that pen.
So really, we need a 4
We
or a
do.
1.
Oh,
That's
take
good.
that
Yes.
one. Yeah. It's stressful now. Right.
We need to put some
Shall we move
tense-
this one?
yeah,
or-
yeah. Move that.
Yeah.
Yeah, move that. I'm pointing at it, and you can't. see.
Haha, I have found an article entitled Board Games Through the Lens of Art History.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. See, people using our lens concept.
Yeah.
Well, this was from 2019, so you know,
I'm still
technically
feeling
we've
out.
stolen hers.
God.
So the best they could do is draw,
Have to do it, don't you?
Yeah, there's no
or
other
they could
choice.
win. But, shite.
This is where it starts to get stressful because you've got to make it down without getting taken off before
Yeah.
he's 4.
So if he gets a 4, then we're good. No, we're good.
We're good. Come on, little counter. Oh, dangerous times. It's the only way.
I can't look, it's too strong.
Oh my god.
Oh no.
Oh.
So close. Oh, yeah, so far. My god.
And so we don't have any choice now.
No, we have no
No.
choice.
No, this is the place I like when you've set everything up and all there is left to do is roll the dice.
Ugh.
It's so tense for the final part.
Oh!
Yes.
Oh, so if they capture you, does
Yes. We just needed 2
Oh,
now.
we're safe now,
We
aren't
just
we?
needed 2.
We still have to roll
Come on, 2. Oh no.
before they get all their guys back.
Yeah.
See, again,
The
I
chances
described
are-
maleness
Oh.
to the pieces, but you know.
Come on. Gotta get a 2. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
We've
that
done
is my
it.
favourite thing I've ever seen.
Yes.
That felt really stressful for
It was.
such a simple
That's
game.
fireworks.
Oh,
And that was easy.
Yeah.
we're all over excited now.
Wow. Well done, everybody.
And that was with us in the 21st century, with absolutely everything around. Can you imagine 4,000 years ago
It would have been amazing.
sitting down and playing that? Blow your mind. It's like with like epic poetry, like with Homer and the Odyssey. Can you imagine? You've never heard anything, and then some guy comes into town and tells you a sweeping epic. That kind of just, I love that idea of wonder, and
Yeah.
any game that can make you feel that. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I really feel like with the TV adaptation of The Witcher that they've been doing at the moment, I have always found bards the most annoying, boring shit ever. Because I never thought of it like you've just said, Matt. I don't think of it like that. And I feel they've done a really good job in The Witcher of making you understand why bards were important, why how they made people go, wow, I'm going to sit up and listen to this story, and like this is really fascinating. And it, you know, they were the entertainment of their time, etc. And yeah, so I just wanted to go on about how, especially in season 2, I feel like they've really done a brilliant job with Buttercup, or whatever his bloody name. He's not, you know what I mean.
Dandelion. Yeah.
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 They had actually a really cool bard in Wheel of Time, the Wheel of Time adaptation. They had a really
he
cool
was
bard
really
in
good
there.
as well. I think that's it. I've been thinking about it more this year because of both that one as well. And it was like, it's as you say, Matt, it's that sort of, you've got to look at it from the lens of, I'm sitting around in my village with nothing going on, and I've never had anything this exciting turn up. And then this sort of sexy rock star essentially turns up and in your local pub and gives you a performance. And it's just like, wow, this is amazing, you know.
I think things we take for granted, like being able to read. That's something I hate the Dark Ages for, because they didn't teach anyone to read. And I think, you imagine. I can't imagine.
God, sorry, now you set me off on other
No,
things.
it's good. It's good. This is what happens when people play board games. Discussions. Imagine, like, the amount of discussions people would have had with playing this board game.
Yeah.
Like, so good. And I love that the dice were triangles, pyramid-shaped things. That's really cool as well. They must have been hard to
You get
to
those
roll.
in D&D, Alex.
Yeah.
You
No,
need to
but
play
like,
more D&D.
oh, I
Get
do
them.
actually. Yeah, I did play some at my other half's the weekend before last, which was quite fun. I made a chandelier drop onto a ghost, and it nearly killed it, but not quite. Just good.
You can do something like that in the Hitman games.
Yeah.
My D&D game, we're currently stuck in a time loop, which is fun, but also really annoying. But as you say, ancient games, all we need is a piece of metal or bone and a couple of dice, and you're off.
Yeah, pretty much. I think that pretty much wraps up the episode for this evening and or morning or afternoon, whenever you're listening or watching it. And I hope you enjoyed our very brief and limited look at ancient games. If you want to find out more, you know where to find Wikipedia. Go and look at all the pretty pictures and have a play of Game of as well, because it's really good fun. And I don't have a wildcard question. Unless we really want a wildcard question, I could try and pick one out of thin air, but we can probably leave it because I've had a lot of fun playing Royal Game of Air, and I think that is a nice way to finish the episode. So, if we're all happy, we can tell you can find Gaming the System every Thursday at 7 p.m. with a podcast, live stream, and various other bits and pieces, including sometimes guests. And then on other days we do deep dives and all sorts of things like that, So take a look out for us. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Leave a review, leave a comment, tell us what you think, and like, share, and subscribe. I think that's all of the things I'm supposed to say. And we have been Alex, Matt, Caroline, and Jem. And we are Gaming the System, and we'll see you sometime. Another time. All right. And have a lovely evening, everybody. Okay.
Thank
Bye
you.
then. Bye.